So you live in Hursley?
I'm
Okay.
based in Hursley, but I'm about 10-15 miles south of Hursley.
So how long are you with IBM?
IBM, I've just clocked up 16 years.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
So how it comes that such a, let's say, old IBM guy is using such a creative programming language like JavaScript and creating such a project like NodeRED?
Well, it's funny to the label of as an old IBM guy at 16 years. It's all perspective, but no, I've had a range of different jobs, careers at IBM.
Okay.
From doing storage test and development work, doing messaging middleware development work, doing client emerging technologies work, now doing the developer advocacy. So whole range of different things, but I think the move towards doing emerging technologies, which is where I've been the last 5-6 years, the move to the developer advocacy role, it's all very much looking at, particularly with emerging technologies, looking at what are the new technologies coming along that, I always describe it as the emerging technologies group that I was in Hursley were, we're not talking about brand new research, and we're not talking the sort of the 5 to 10 year emerging. We're talking about the 2 to 5 year. On the whole, some of the stuff is
okay. So what can get into production in 2 or 3 years? Maybe?
Yeah, so the sort of technologies on the nearer horizon that clients would want to make use of in a real project, or sometimes it's technology areas that for all the breadth of what IBM does, they may not just have some skills in a particular piece, and so often the emerging tech group would come in just to help fill a gap.
Okay.
And often for the sorts of projects I was getting involved with, that gap was physical devices and sensors, and getting those integrated into getting the messages from those into the more traditional IBM middleware.
Was that the time when NodeRED was born?
So that, very much around the same sort of time. So 4.5 years ago, I guess now. So was when, between client projects, given the space to just learn new technologies, I wanted to learn Node.js.
Okay.
I was already doing a bunch of visualization projects, so in the browser, so visualizing data.
D3 or what?
Yeah, using D3. So wanted to do something interesting with that goes beyond just visualization, and something actual, hands-on, useful beyond just visualizing data. And the idea of being able to visualize message flows and how you want to express how you want a message coming in on an MQTT topic from a device here, and you want it to go out on another MQTT topic, maybe with some sort of transformation.
Okay.
That was a problem from a previous role doing messaging middleware, recognizing the programmatic APIs we provided on the particular thing I worked on. No one really used it because the programmatic APIs weren't very nice to use. So I had, almost 10 years ago now, played around with the idea of could you visualize in a web browser the flow of messages.
Okay.
And 10 years ago, the options were limited, shall we say, for what you could do. And I got a basic thing, but purely all in the browser visualization.
Okay.
So,
was there a specific reason that you have been chosen to use a Node.js, or just curiosity?
At the time it was curiosity,
Okay.
because again, just circumstance. A lot of the projects I was doing were web-based dashboards, so JavaScript had become what I was just using for a lot of the stuff, but it was a lot of in the browser, front-end development type stuff. Anything I did server side was typically Python, but again, that was just a choice of a language. I don't get too wedded to languages. I'm not like I don't say Node's better than Go or better than that. I don't get drawn into that.
Okay.
It was just at the time Node.js seemed interesting and I wanted to play around with it.
Okay.
And
do you want to comment on reactive?
there are all the different toolkits for doing the browser, the front end development. Anyone who's looked at the NodeRED source code for the editor, I've never really got into the UI toolkits like reactive or Angular, and so I've sort of from an academic perspective can sort of see the pros and cons of each one, but I've never really sat down to build stuff with them.
Okay, but I think you are coming from a multi-threaded world, and Node.js is single-threaded, no?
It's one of those, yes, strictly speaking, it is single-threaded, but its whole sort of asynchronous callback model means it's not like you're writing procedural code where one statement runs after the next. I mean, clearly within a function that's what happens, but in the async callback world, it is you can get into this multi-threaded in the sense that different parts of the application could suddenly do something at any time. They're not going to happen at the same time, but you've got to be aware of order of execution can shuffle around.
So you have
based on external
non-determinism as well, but you don't have any waste of, let's say, heap memory region per thread and all that stuff in Java.
You don't have to worry about that stuff. Race conditions, I mean, with any language, any model, you can tie yourself in knots if you don't quite do it the right way. And, yes, Node.js is single-threaded, but it provides plenty of ways you can get yourself in trouble. So it's
I'm not saying that it's more easy, even I have to say it's even more complicated to write code on a, let's say, callback style programming.
It is a frame of mind you get into about thinking of the callbacks and recognizing when a bit of code you're writing a function which returns at the end, but recognizing the actual function in the middle, the code in the middle will happen after you've returned because it's actually inside a callback inside your function. And that with NodeRED, that model in my mind, in my head, fits quite nicely where the nodes are wired together. You know the order the nodes will execute on a given message. But when you've got 3 messages coming through on different flows, you don't know what order any individual message is going to get processed if they're in different parts, different flows.
That way you are solving a problem which multi-threaded data flow engines are solving with a so-called back pressure method. Have you heard about that? So you don't need it because there is no multi-threaded environment where you have to induce back pressure, no?
Yes and no. I mean, back pressure still serves a purpose when, and I say this as functionality we do not have in NodeRED. There are scenarios when you want to pump a lot of data in, and at some point, in some circumstances, you would want to be able to push back on the producer to say, just
stop,
slow down, because NodeRED will accept as much work as you'll give it. But if your flow isn't processing that, then that's your system memory growing as messages queue up. So without back pressure, you can run into memory issues. It's not an area we've had to explore, but I think there's some interesting stuff. One of the third-party companies we know of who have adopted NodeRED as part of their tooling have actually done some customizations in the runtime. Where they do more batching up of messages between nodes. That has enabled them to, for their, and again, it's always for their use case. It's not clear it would be always applicable. For their usage, it's improved the throughput by an order of magnitude. For what they're doing, yeah, it's an interesting area, and again, on a long list of interesting areas with NodeRED of things it'd be great to dig into.
Okay. But regarding performance, do you have some numbers? I have noticed that it's pretty fast. So
yeah, so I have personally sort of resisted trying to produce a performance report because there are frankly too many variables. Whether it's naively or not, I kind of say, well, you don't get a performance report for Node.js, or you don't get a performance report for Java.
Okay.
And NodeRED ultimately is a programming platform for you to create an application. And the performance you get is going to be determined by what you ask it to do.
Okay, that's fair.
So you could create a flow that receives an MQTT message and then publishes it to another topic, and you'd get a really good high throughput. As soon as you put in a function node to operate on every message, well, that's 30-40 milliseconds per message extra, so that's going to drop. You want to save it in a database as well. Well, that's probably might be a network call, or it's, each thing your application does add a natural latency.
Okay.
So that's my defense when people say, so what performance can you get? So, but I can point to some examples of a proof of concept mobile application, mobile banking application was created. They use NodeRED to do the back-end APIs for the mobile app.
Okay.
And they did a really nice sort of microservice architecture. I think they had like 9 NodeRED instances, each handling a different part of the API.
Okay.
And they were doing, in their testing of one of the scenarios, something like 400 requests a second with negligible errors, or not errors caused by NodeRED. Just natural sort of process errors. But anyway, 400 requests a second sustained constantly, which and these were all tiny footprint NodeRED instances running in IBM Bluemix. So and for their proof of concept, that was what they had to get to.
Okay.
So that was good. And scaling NodeRED is an interesting topic, and one we do get asked about, whether it's how do you try and scale vertically by throwing more processor or memory? Well, as we've said, Node.js is single-threaded, so giving it extra cores of processor
so much.
Doesn't do anything for you really.
Okay.
Adding more memory, okay, so that's going to help.
At least for the back pressure.
Handling the back pressure and how to work. But the real secret is how can you load balance, scale horizontally. So run 2 instances and balance the load. And then it was interesting, for some time we were looking at, well, how can we make NodeRED horizontally scale anything you give it?
Okay.
But we soon sort of realised, well, that's an unrealistic goal, because you can't automatically. You can write Java apps that don't scale at all. You need to write an application to be scalable, and the same is true for NodeRED. So you have to. It's the whole 12-factor app concept. How do you manage state? Do you have any state? How do you load balance? So if it's HTTP driven, like the mobile banking app, which was a REST API, then you can use an API gateway to load balance between your different instances. That's nice and easy. With what's an IoT platform, they do have a mode where a client can connect as a scalable application. So you can have multiple clients connecting as the same application, and the platform will load balance messages amongst them.
Oh, I see.
So that's a. I think it's been there for why it wasn't there originally, but they added it. I think in the last year. So that's great. So you can actually create a NodeRED application that you can spin up additional instances of in order to scale. But yeah, recognizing it's quite a manual thing to try and manage today, I think it's an area that we just need to gain more experience of and knowledge in the community of.
Like you would scale individual Node.js instances.
Much the same way.
So how is the relationship between the UI and the backend? Is that something tightly coupled, or
They are coupled in the sense that the backend serves up the editor.
Okay.
Okay, so at the moment you can't just install one without the other.
Okay.
Now you can, when you install it, there is a setting to turn off the editor.
Okay.
So you can have, whilst you have to install both, you only run the runtime component, and it doesn't expose any of the REST endpoints or the UI at all. So that's that mode. But we don't have the reverse, where you want to just install the editor and point it at a runtime elsewhere. Okay. So this is one of the things we have in our roadmap that we published a couple of months ago. Is actually, I mean, it's largely a packaging exercise, but I think the more we dig into it, there is more functional work to be done. But to actually separate out the packaging of the runtime in the editor, so that in the first instance they are packaged separately, but when you install NodeRED, you still get them combined and coupled as a single thing, but that it would be possible to just install the runtime without the footprint of the editor being there. And then you would be able to take the editor and do something with it in a standalone fashion. So in the first instance, it won't be, we'll have a standalone installable editor, but at least the separation of packaging enables us to then create a version of the editor that has a different back-end behind it that knows how to talk to remote runtimes or
whatever in the mind of any.
Because there's different architectures. Yeah. Are you doing that because actually you want the editor to be multi-user, and depending who logs into the editor, it points to different runtime? Okay. That's one model. Okay. The other model is for scaling of NodeRED, you want the one editor, but when you hit deploy, you want those flows to be then pushed to 10 NodeRED runtimes because you're load balancing amongst them. And this is one of the ones that I'm really interested in from an IoT story, is within the editor.
The fog thing.
Well, it's within the editor you want to be able to describe the complete life cycle of a message from we read a sensor value on a device, it goes to a gateway and it does some local work on a gateway, and it goes to then some back-end processing. Well, what if you could draw a NodeRED flow that represents that entire life cycle of the message?
That would be awesome.
Then when you hit deploy, it automatically carves that up into 3 different flows, one to run on a device, one on the gateway, and one in Bluemix, and it automatically puts in the what's an IoT nodes or the communication channels. So again, as an app developer, I don't have to think about what's an IoT. It's an implementation detail of how messages logically get from my device to my application. Okay. So the platform becomes, like with all good messaging, the platform becomes just invisible pipes that for moving data and all the great value and important value that brings. But as a developer, and with NodeRED, that moving the abstraction higher, getting to the point where how data gets from A to B is not important. What I do with the data once it gets there, that's the value. So anyway, that's an interesting area once we've separated them out and some of the other items in our roadmap to help enable.
The editor, is that something you have written yourself?
Yeah. Pretty much all of the myself, my colleague Dave Conway-Jones, between us we've done most of the development work on NodeRED. And it's one of the good things we've seen in the last couple of years, and since joining the project, joining the JavaScript Foundation a year ago, seeing a nice sort of slight uptick in other people starting to contribute. We've got some third parties who are using NodeRED in their own offerings or interested, starting to actually contribute some development resource and getting a nice steady stream of pull requests coming in, which is great to see. They're right now hitting a lot of, finding a lot of edge cases in some of the nodes that no one had stumbled across. So great, just finding those issues and
they get fixed by.
So they're finding the issues and they're providing. Here's the issue and here's the fix for it, and it's all good stuff. Okay. That's the power of being an open source project. Yeah.
But the governance, is it still done by you and your colleague, or how is that?
Well, yes, in so much as we we govern the project through the people who have got the technical commitment to the project. Okay. So right now, just by virtue of myself and Dave are the ones spending our time developing NodeRED. Mm-hmm. Yes, we're the ones who have to review the pull requests and work on that and set the technical direction. But we have, since joining the JavaScript Foundation a year ago, written up our governance model on NodeRED.org. Tried to make it clear that yes, Dave and I are IBMers running this project, but this is not an IBM project. It is a JS Foundation project, but if someone wants to get involved and help shape the direction, then the door is open for them to come in, get involved. Clearly that it's not a case of just come and you can't just step in the door and start telling us what to do, but bringing the community along with us. Okay. And Dave and I spend a lot of time working with the community. So our roadmap isn't just what Dave and I reckon we should be doing. It is shaped by the conversations we've had with the community, with third parties who are using NodeRED, from the people on Slack, people we talk to at events like we're at here at the IoT headquarters. So it's very much driven by where people want it to go, and
So how does a normal workday look like? Is it 100% NodeRED, or if so, what parts?
So,
are you doing?
As in my role in the developer advocacy group for What's an IoT, my primary focus is certainly NodeRED and recognizing the role, having an open tool chain around IoT, the importance that brings to developers, having open tools that they can use to be productive. So I'm fortunately in a position where that affords me to spend time focused on NodeRED, but there are also plenty of other responsibilities with the role. Extending the Coursera work we've done, so we did the Developer's Guide to IoT. I was trying to remember when we did that. I mean, it was a year ago now, or earlier this year, I forget, but a while ago. Okay. But we're now doing the follow-on course, Developer Guide to NodeRED, so a course much more focused specifically on NodeRED as a follow-on to the previous one. Okay. So, working with our colleague Brian and others in the team to help produce that course. Doing events like this, and actually talking to developers, developer advocate, we actually need to get out there talking to developers. Yeah, everybody was quite happy that they finally met you. Yeah, no, it's always funny to see, because to me, it's my little side project. I started 4.5 years ago, and I recognise that every developer has their little side projects. I've had dozens of side projects that fall by the wayside. You learn something, you move on, and NodeRED, somehow just hit the right. It was the right thing at the right time. That we've been incredibly fortunate with certainly in the early days when no one knew about it, and I think we both within IBM got it in front of the right people to get nice sort of internal support and people like it internally and validation internally. I'm it's my little side project. Okay. But how does it feel if your little side project is so well known that thousands of developers are using it? I know it is quite surreal, and it's to sort of remind myself of that. And I mean, I remember. So we open sourced it on GitHub in September in 2013. About a couple of days later, no, in fact, just before we'd formally open sourced it, I spoke at the IoT London meetup, and sort of did a preview of look what we're about to launch. Okay. It was a bit cheeky to do it a bit early, but such was the event was that night, and hey, I may as well do it. So, and a couple of people saw it and liked it, and just followed up with them, and then we open sourced it. And literally 2 weeks later, I went to a open source hardware conference in the UK, and one of the guys who I'd seen a couple of weeks earlier had been planning to do a home automation workshop for people at this event using MQTT and Arduinos and things like that. anyway, I went along just to show some support. He didn't know I was going to be there, and I went in a bit late, and on everyone's computer was NodeRED.
Okay.
So in the 2 weeks after I'd sort of shown it and we published it, he had scrapped what he had planned to do for the workshop and created his own little workshop using NodeRED.
Wow. Okay, cool.
So, and that was weird to go in, and here was, I knew the guy hosting it. I didn't know any of the other people, and here they all are getting, very, very, very early NodeRED, but basically functional, and that was quite weird. And then, it's sort of, I now get a bit blasé over just the number of times I see it crop up here, there, and anywhere.
Yeah, it's normal. No, it's everywhere now.
Yeah,
even for me, I'm seeing it so often.
So there's a Raspberry Pi magazine called Magpie, and this month's edition is all about Lego projects with the Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
So I saw it on the, I don't always buy it, but this time I saw it was there covered with Lego on the front. I thought, Lego Raspberry Pi, I've got to get it. So I bought it there and then, took it home, flicked it, read it. Came across a 4-page tutorial about doing something with NodeRED.
Okay.
It was like, that's cool. I mean, because we're pre-installed on the Raspberry Pi, we know the Raspberry Pi guys. So it was like, nice surprise. Wasn't entirely surprising, but that's really neat. Okay. Anyway, close it up, put it down. On the front cover, there's sort of a big blurb saying, tutorial of doing something with NodeRED on the front cover. I hadn't even spotted it.
Okay.
Because it was covered in Lego, I got distracted. But again, it was that sudden realisation that I've just bought in a supermarket in the UK a magazine that has a tutorial
with your side project.
Yeah. It's like,
that's cool.
Every now and then I just have to pinch myself as to that is happening.
Okay.
But
So what are your future plans with NodeRED?
Future plans, we have our roadmap to get to version 1.0. Again, very much driven by the feedback we've had. We've talked about splitting the editor and the runtime. That's certainly in the roadmap. Right now, my main focus, what I'm working on when I'm writing code, is around version control. So being able to integrate with Git Repository in NodeRED, and the various sort of complexities that brings. So really enabling better workflow, developer workflow with NodeRED, because it started out as a single user, single device type tool. And for anyone who's tried to collaborate with others on one NodeRED instance, with each other, overwriting each other's changes or having constantly to merge each other's, it's not a great experience. So,
but at least you can merge now.
At least you can merge. Yeah. For a long time, you would overwrite someone else's changes without even knowing.
Yeah.
So you can merge now, but it's a bit painful. So moving to managing it with a Git repository, so each developer can have that developed locally, and then have a central Git repository. You still have challenges over merging, but at least that you can create a workflow that you're not trampling over each other each time you hit the deploy button.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, and it's early days. Still need to refine exactly how that would appear within Bluemix.
Okay.
Because a lot of what we're doing assumes things about local file system and Git and things we don't have when we run in Bluemix. So don't be surprised if when we launch version control and projects in NodeRED, the open source project, the Bluemix experience won't change overnight. Because and this is the interesting sort of two hats I have to wear. There's NodeRED, the open source project, which is agnostic of any vendor technology, because there are others who embed it in their own platforms. I then have to switch hats to then, now we've done that, how does that integrate into Bluemix and the services Bluemix offers? So there's always an interesting tension to not make NodeRED a Bluemix tool, because that will, we are, as a JS Foundation project, we are not tying it to any one vendor technology. But clearly it's in our own interests to make sure we have a nice seamless experience, however you want to use NodeRED, whether it's on a device like a Raspberry Pi or a BeagleBone, or in the, IBM Bluemix, or any other cloud provider. Clearly it's great when people choose to use Bluemix, because we've got such a great ecosystem of Bluemix nodes, the Watson cognitive nodes, the Watson platform nodes, cloud nodes. There's just so much you can do with the Bluemix platform.
Yeah. Even some people told me that NodeRED is Bluemix. So even the experience is like that.
Yeah, I think that's because of the abstraction it provides of visualizing an application. One of the hard things with demoing a platform as a service is often you end up having to demo code. Because it's one thing to say, here's a catalog, I click database, I now have a database. Well, yes, you have a database, you still have to write code to do anything with the database. So NodeRED has certainly found an audience of how do you demo code when you don't want to bore people with individual lines of code.
Okay.
You want to demonstrate the developer experience of building an application without having to say, well, just wait whilst I add a try-catch block and do some... it's that abstraction that NodeRED gives, which is certainly one of the many reasons I'm trying to understand why has it been successful. That is clearly one of the areas that has made it accessible to such a wide audience.
How long do you take to create a REST endpoint in NodeRED?
Seconds.
How many?
Oh, well, I've done countless projects with NodeRED. I have a personal instance running that does all sorts of... I forget all the various little things it does, bits of automation I have of whenever someone raises an issue on GitHub, I've got some NodeRED flows set up with webhooks to do stuff. I've countless things that I forget that I've got running. And
you cannot live anymore without NodeRED?
I've probably automated stuff I would have never bothered to automate.
Yeah, because it's so easy and so fast.
Because it's so fast and easy. I think that's the way to...
Okay. To give you my answer, I need 7 seconds. That's my first.
Is that your time just... yeah. Very good.
And to add audit using noise code database, it's 13 seconds. 20 seconds, it's done.
Very good.
Okay. Anything else you want us to tell?
No, I think, well, as I said, it's the project is 4.5 years old. It's obviously great. We've just hit 750,000 downloads of NPM.
Wow. Okay.
So we should hit 1 million early in the new year, which again is just a crazy milestone to reach for my little side project. So
just for the records, I've touched to create NodeRED.
But and really the message we get out is we are an open source project, and we depend on our users and contributors to get involved, whether it's just talking to us, feeding back what's good, what's bad, what could be improved, to helping with the documentation, helping with bug fixes, whatever it might be. There are so many ways people can engage with an open source project beyond writing code, and that we're so reliant on that sort of contribution.
Thanks a lot, Nick. We love you. We love NodeRED. Thanks a lot to you.
Excellent. Cheers.
Thank you.